Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Bold and Beautiful. Today Bill discovers the dreadful truth Grace is keeping. Shady Liam deal is struck by Bill and Grace. While John Finnegan and Bridget Forrester get suspicious, Bill Spencer and Grace Buckingham will make a dubious bargain with Liam Spencer. Bill will be looking for a life-saving cure now that he is aware of Liam's incurable brain tumor. On Tuesday's B&B episode, Bill will ask Grace for assistance because Liam is largely her patient and inquire as to whether Liam has any genuine chance of recovery. Grace will acknowledge that there is and offer a surgical option, which is likely to entail some experimental procedures and carries a number of dangers. Additionally, it will cost a lot of money, but Bill is willing to spend $1 million, reportedly, to give Liam a chance at survival. Later, Grace will appear relieved about the bank account transfer because it seems like someone has been bugging her about money. Given that Grace's motivations for protecting Liam aren't totally pure, can she really be trusted? It's possible that Grace is attempting to settle debt pertaining to Dr. Reese Buckingham and is suffering threats. Grace might be under pressure from someone in the medical field who wants to use Liam as a test subject. In any case, Grace does appear to care about Liam's survival. Bill is hoping for a good outcome because this dangerous procedure might be Liam's greatest chance of staying for his girls. Finn and Bridget will sense something is wrong while Bill anxiously awaits the outcome of Liam's surgery. With her next actions, Grace will defy convention, leading Bridget and Finn to wonder what's actually happening. When Liam is hurried into yet another operation, even he will appear somewhat perplexed. Even when Grace assures Liam that everything will be alright, he will still have questions that might not be addressed at this time. The revelation of Liam Spencer's inoperable brain tumor struck Bill Spencer like a physical blow, shattering the tycoon's usual veneer of invincible control and replacing it with a raw, primal desperation that crackled in the air around him, a tangible force field of paternal anguish. The word inoperable echoed not as a medical term but as a death sentence pronounced upon his son, a verdict Bill, with every fiber of his being forged in the fires of conquest and acquisition, refused to accept. His mind already frantically scouring the universe for a loophole, a backdoor, anything that could snatch Liam back from the precipice. It was this desperate, almost feral energy that propelled Bill towards Dr. Grace Buckingham on Tuesday, not as a business associate navigating the complexities of Spencer Publications, but as a father stripped bare, his voice uncharacteristically stripped of its command, thick with a vulnerability he rarely displayed, pleading for a sliver of hope where official prognosis offered only bleak finality. Grace, he'd implored, the single name laden with the weight of his world collapsing, tell me there's something. Anything. Don't give me platitudes, don't give me statistics. Is there real hope for Liam? Grace, standing amidst the sterile authority of her office, the epitome of professional composure yet with shadows lurking beneath the surface of her focused gaze, shadows of pressure, of debts unpaid, of a past involving her disgraced ex-husband, Dr. Reese Buckingham, that refused to stay buried, met Bill's desperate stare. For a suspended moment, the air hung heavy with unspoken tensions, the specter of Reese's medical malfeasance and financial ruin a ghost haunting the room, before Grace, drawing a breath that seemed to fortify her resolve against unseen adversaries, delivered the answer Bill craved, yet draped in ominous uncertainty. There is a possibility, Bill. It's not conventional. It's certainly not guaranteed. She then unveiled the shadowy option, an experimental surgical procedure, a high-wire act of neurosurgery existing on the bleeding edge of medical science, whispered about in specialized journals but far from mainstream practice. It involved techniques so novel they bordered on theoretical, perhaps targeted nanotherapy designed to shrink the tumor from within, or a radical laser ablation approach accessing previously unreachable depths, or even a controversial gene editing adjunct aimed at halting malignant growth. The risks she outlined were a chilling litany: catastrophic hemorrhage, permanent neurological damage far exceeding the tumor's current threat, paralysis, the terrifying potential of inducing a persistent vegetative state, or simply, failure, leaving Liam no better off, or worse, while consuming precious, irretrievable time. And then came the coup de grace, the element that instantly cast the entire proposition into a morally murky twilight, the exorbitant, almost grotesque price tag. The resources required, the specialized team, the proprietary technology, The discretion, Grace explained, her voice carefully modulated, yet a flicker of something akin to relief or perhaps grim satisfaction crossed her features as she named the figure, $1 million. Bill didn't hesitate. Not a second. The hesitation that might accompany a billion-dollar corporate takeover was absent here. This was his son's life. A life he felt responsible for jeopardizing countless times. With a curt nod, the gesture of a man accustomed to moving mountains with his checkbook but never for a stake this profoundly personal, he authorized the immediate transfer. The digital chime confirming the colossal sum landing in Grace's specified account moments later seemed obscenely mundane against the life-or-death gravity of the situation. Bill saw it as the price of hope, the necessary fuel for a miracle. Yet, the subtle, almost imperceptible release of tension in Grace's shoulders, the way her knuckles whitened slightly before relaxing on the edge of her desk, spoke volumes. This wasn't just about funding a surgery, it was a payoff. Someone, somewhere, connected to the labyrinthine world of high-stakes, fringe medicine or, more darkly, to the fallout of Reese Buckingham's past scandals, perhaps a ruthless investor in the experimental tech, a blackmailer holding Reese's debts over Grace, or a morally bankrupt colleague viewing Liam as the perfect, desperate lab rat, had been hounding her. That $1 million was a lifeline thrown not just to Liam, but to Grace herself, silencing a menacing chorus demanding payment, buying her temporary safety, or securing access to the forbidden surgical fruit. Could Grace truly be trusted? The scalpel she wielded was potentially tainted. Her motives were a tangled knot, genuine medical ambition and a healer's desire to save a life intertwined with the desperate need for financial salvation and the corrosive fear of whatever threats pursued her. Was Liam's survival the paramount goal, or was he primarily the golden ticket, the uniquely vulnerable patient whose wealthy, desperate father could bankroll her escape from crushing pressure, transforming him unwittingly into the ultimate test subject for a procedure craving validation, regardless of the ethical abyss it traversed? Despite this shadow, Grace's investment in Liam's survival felt palpably real, the intensity in her eyes when discussing the procedure, the meticulousness implied in her preparation, suggested a personal stake beyond mere financial relief, perhaps a chance for professional redemption, a way to finally step out from Reese's long, disgraceful shadow by achieving a medical triumph, or simply the fundamental drive of a doctor facing the ultimate challenge. For Bill, clinging to this fragile, million-dollar reed of hope, the ethical ambiguities were a distant, irrelevant hum. The only reality was the potential for Liam to live, to see his daughters grow, to have a future. He would willingly walk through any moral gray zone, sign any check, pressure any authority, to grasp that chance. As Liam, pale and bewildered, weakened by his condition and the psychological toll of his prognosis, was prepped for this sudden, unexpected second act of surgery, a development arriving with shocking swiftness, bypassing standard consultations and second opinions, his confusion was heart-wrenching. Another operation? Dr. Buckingham? What is this? I thought. His voice, thin with fear and fatigue, trailed off as the gurney moved. Grace, hovering near him, projected an aura of calm authority, a mask expertly fitted. Liam, trust me, she soothed, her hand briefly resting on his arm, a gesture meant to reassure but potentially laced with the weight of her own duress. This could be your best chance. We're going to try something groundbreaking. It's going to be okay. Her words were meant as an anchor, but they rang slightly hollow, failing to fully dispel the profound bewilderment clouding Liam's eyes. He had questions, urgent, fundamental questions about the nature of this mysterious intervention, the risks glossed over in the urgent rush, the sheer suddenness of it all, questions that hung heavily in the antiseptic air, deliberately left unanswered in the critical, time-pressured momentum propelling him towards the operating theater. This deliberate ambiguity, this sidestepping of informed consent in its fullest sense, was the first fraying thread noticed by the ever-perceptive eyes watching from the periphery. While Bill paced the plush, silent waiting room, a caged lion radiating nervous energy, his fortune impotent to influence the drama unfolding behind sterile doors, and Liam surrendered to the uncertain mercy of experimental medicine, the gears of suspicion began to turn elsewhere. Dr. John Finnegan and Dr. Bridget Forrester, grounded in established medical ethics and protocols, started comparing notes. The sheer speed of the event, the astronomical, opaque payment flowing from Bill to Grace outside normal hospital channels, the vague whispers of an experimental option Grace hadn't presented to the broader tumor board or thoroughly vetted with senior colleagues, it all coalesced into a deeply unsettling picture. Grace was moving with uncharacteristic haste, bending rules, operating in a concerningly autonomous bubble. Why the secrecy? Why bypass standard peer review for something this monumentally risky? Where did this sudden, immensely expensive procedure materialize from? To Finn, with his innate sense of justice and deep care for Steffi and the girls, and to Bridget, possessing both medical acumen and a personal history intertwined with the Spencer/Forrester dynasties, the situation reeked of impropriety. Their professional instincts screamed that something fundamental was off, that the noble goal of saving Liam was potentially being hijacked by darker, more mercenary forces exploiting Bill's desperation and Grace's precarious position. As Liam lay vulnerable on the table, the experimental machinery whirring to life under Grace's command, the million-dollar deal struck in shadowy desperation between the ruthless father and the pressured doctor began to unravel at the edges. Finn and Bridget, united in growing unease, represented the dawning light of scrutiny, their suspicion a gathering storm threatening to expose whether the deal was a genuine medical miracle in the making or a profoundly dangerous, ethically bankrupt gamble with a man's life as the ultimate, unwitting stake. The fate of Liam Spencer hung suspended not only on the skill of the surgeon and the fringe science employed, but on the true motives behind the scalpel and the devastating secrets the $1 million was meant to bury. Liam needs emergency surgery? The sacrifice of Liam. When Luna Nozawa's gun went off during a fight, Liam Spencer, who was playing the hero with a brain tumor, jumped up and shot Luna in the chest because he was upset. At this point, Sheila Carter is barely alive, Liam is fighting for his life, and Luna is dead. What a mess. Is it Liam's brain tumor or his bullet wound that is forcing Grace Buckingham to take him back into surgery? It's difficult to determine which aspect of Liam is now failing because he is in such bad shape. Hope Logan and Steffi Forrester Finnegan are inconsolable when Liam's condition deteriorates. Dolar's demands from Bill. Perhaps Bill Spencer's emotional state is worse than Steffi and Hope's. He is aware that he has a large portion of the culpability for what transpired. Luna would still be in jail or, at the absolute least, under home arrest if it weren't for him. If Luna were still in prison in any capacity, she most definitely could not have shot his son. Now, while Grace tries desperately to save Liam, it's a waiting game. Is it feasible that she has discovered a technique to manage the tumor, given her unwavering will to keep him alive for as long as possible? Has Bill been keeping his son's tumor a secret from him for months, and now he knows? If Bill finds out when the tumor's symptoms originally appeared, it will only make him feel worse. It happened months after he and Liam had a heated argument in his living room. Bill finds it unbelievable that all of this madness was taking place in front of him and that he was too blind to stop it. He may now come to the realization that it is too late to bid his son farewell as he awaits word on Liam. The sterile, brutal light of the emergency operating room bleached all color from the world, leaving only the stark, terrifying reality laid out on the table. Liam Spencer, a man who hours ago played the tragic hero sacrificing himself to end Luna Nozawa's reign of terror, now lay balanced on the thinnest precipice between existence and oblivion. The air hummed with the low drone of machines, the ventilator forcing breath into lungs that fought to remember the rhythm, the heart monitor painting jagged, anxious peaks and valleys across the screen, the insistent beep of the blood pressure cuff cycling relentlessly, a symphony of artificial life battling the encroaching silence. Grace Buckingham, her brow furrowed not just with concentration but with a profound, bone-deep weariness that transcended physical exhaustion, moved with a precision honed by decades of crisis, yet her eyes held a flicker of something more personal, more desperate. The scene Liam created was catastrophic. The point-blank gunshot wound Luna inflicted was a savage insult to his already critically compromised body, tearing through muscle and bone, leaving ragged edges and a cavity of ruin in his upper torso, perilously close to major vessels and organs already straining under the immense, invisible pressure within his skull. Yet, the true horror, the insidious enemy Grace wrestled with beyond the visible trauma, was the malignant storm brewing behind Liam's eyes, the aggressive brain tumor he'd hidden from nearly everyone, a ticking time bomb whose countdown had been violently accelerated. Was the critical decline in his vitals, the plummeting blood pressure, the erratic, weakening heartbeat, the sudden neurological deterioration, a direct consequence of catastrophic blood loss and shock from the gunshot? Or had the physical trauma, the immense stress, the surge of adrenaline during the struggle and his final, fatal act triggered a catastrophic event inside his brain? Was the tumor hemorrhaging, swelling uncontrollably, squeezing the life out of the very centers that kept him Liam? Each labored breath Liam took, or rather, that the machine forced into him, felt like a stolen moment, each tremor on the monitor a potential death knell. Grace's hands, steady as steel within their gloves, worked with lightning speed to control the bleeding, clamping vessels, packing the wound, replacing lost volume with rapid transfusions, fighting the immediate, visible threat threatening to drain him dry. Yet, her mind raced on a parallel, terrifying track. The tumor wasn't just a background threat, it was the specter distorting the entire battlefield. Had the initial surgery she performed merely delayed the inevitable, buying time she now realized was cruelly insufficient? Did the shock of the gunshot cause the tumor margins to bleed internally, creating deadly pressure? Or was the pressure building relentlessly, independent of the gunshot, finally reaching a terminal crescendo, its symptoms masked by the overwhelming trauma of the wound? Every second spent stabilizing his cardiovascular system was a second the unseen monster in his brain might be winning. The scans rushed before surgery were horrifyingly ambiguous. The fresh devastation of the gunshot obscured the subtler, older devastation of the tumor's progression. To save him from bleeding out only to lose him to irreversible brain damage was an unbearable thought. The dilemma was paralyzing yet demanded immediate, irrevocable action. Focus solely on the gunshot and risk him succumbing to the tumor before she could address it, or attempt a perilous, high-risk neurosurgical intervention on a body already teetering on the edge from blood loss and shock? Grace's jaw tightened, her decision was etched in the grim set of her mouth. She would fight the fire in front of her, stabilize the hemorrhage, replace the blood, support the failing organs, buying precious, agonizing minutes. But simultaneously, she barked orders for continuous neuromonitoring, for mannitol to osmotically pull fluid from the brain, for steroids to combat swelling, a desperate holding action against the internal siege. She was playing a high-wire act with death, balancing interventions for two potentially fatal conditions that could each kill him independently or synergistically push him over the edge. The clock wasn't ticking, it was screaming. Outside the OR, in the suffocating silence of the private waiting room thick with antiseptic dread and unspoken terror, the emotional tempest mirrored the medical crisis within. Steffi Forrester Finnegan and Hope Logan, united only by their shared, devastating love for the broken man fighting for his life, sat as islands of anguish in a sea of grief. Steffi's usual fiery composure was shattered, replaced by silent tears that tracked relentless paths down her pale cheeks, her hands clenched white-knuckled in her lap, every nerve ending raw with the memory of their fractured past and the terrifying possibility of no future. Hope, usually a bastion of gentle strength, looked hollowed out, her eyes wide and unfocused, staring blankly at the sterile floor as if it might offer answers, her whispered prayers a fragile counterpoint to the oppressive silence, the weight of their complicated history with Liam momentarily irrelevant against the crushing fear of his loss. But the most profound wreckage radiated from Bill Spencer. Dollar Bill, the titan of industry, the man who commanded boardrooms and built empires, sat hunched in a chair, dwarfed by the magnitude of his own culpability, a broken colossus. The polished veneer was gone, stripped away to reveal raw, agonizing guilt that contorted his features. His son, his only son, lay dying because he had pulled the strings, manipulated the system, ensured Luna Nozawa walked free. He hadn't pulled the trigger, but his arrogance, his belief that he could control the uncontrollable, had loaded the gun and placed it in Luna's hand. The image of Liam already battling a hidden, fatal disease, taking a bullet meant for another, a bullet fired because Bill had orchestrated Luna's release from any meaningful confinement, was a psychic wound deeper than any physical blow. If she were behind bars, if she were on house arrest, anything. The unspoken words echoed in the hollows of his mind, a torturous refrain. He had traded security for control, and the price was his son's life. And then came the final, brutal twist of the knife, delivered in hushed, frantic tones by a nurse Grace had dispatched moments before Liam crashed, the tumor. The revelation hit Bill like a physical blow, stealing his breath. Liam had been carrying this burden, this death sentence, for months. Months. And Bill, blinded by his own anger, his own wounded pride after that explosive confrontation in his living room, the very confrontation the nurse hesitantly suggested might have coincided with the tumor's symptomatic onset, had seen nothing. Not the headaches Liam must have hidden, not the fatigue, not the subtle changes. He'd been too consumed by his own perceived betrayal, too busy lashing out, to see his son was fighting a war on a hidden front. The timing was excruciating. Had Bill's rage, his harsh words, his dismissal, pushed Liam at his most vulnerable? Had the stress of their fractured relationship accelerated the tumor's growth? The guilt wasn't just about Luna anymore, it was a suffocating blanket woven from years of complex, often fraught fatherhood, culminating in this catastrophic failure to see, to protect, to understand. As Grace fought the dual demons ravaging Liam's body, Bill battled the demons of his own making, the chilling realization crashing over him with the force of a tsunami. He might be sitting in this sterile purgatory, waiting for news he couldn't bear to hear, too late. Too late to undo Luna's release, too late to force Liam to seek help for the tumor sooner, too late to mend the rift his own pride had created. The words he needed to say, apologies, affirmations of love, pleas for forgiveness, choked in his throat, trapped by the terrifying possibility that the door to his son's consciousness, perhaps even his life, was already irrevocably closing, leaving Bill forever stranded on the wrong side, haunted by the devastating echo of his own failures. The cruelest cut of all being that his final act as a father might be a silent vigil beside a grave he himself helped dig. The waiting wasn't passive, it was an act of torture, each second stretching into an eternity of imagined failures and the crushing weight of potential, permanent regret, the fate of his son, his legacy, his very soul, hanging in the balance alongside Liam's fragile heartbeat on the other side of the impassive hors d'oeuvres.